Hi there, I'm Anthony Currenti. I'm the UX lead at Tigerspike in Melbourne, and today I want to take you through our journey of DesignOps and how we're trying to get our designers back to designing again. Now, I've been with Tigerspike for a few months now. My role as UX lead is to work with our Melbourne design team to provide support and leadership on our projects and on our team capability. Recently, I've been focusing a lot on our operations and really looking into how we can make some of our processes more efficient. Now, Tigerspike is a global agency. We offer end-to-end enterprise-grade business transformation services. We have around 300 employees in 11 locations around the world, and I'm based down here in cold Melbourne. So, to begin with, I'd like you to think back to the last project you worked on. You might have been asked to run a discovery workshop, or perhaps you were asked to help out with the visual design of a new app. In any case, I'm sure that even before starting on the project, you already began thinking about what elegant, exciting experiences you could create and the value it would add to the lives of your users. You think about the wonderful outputs of your design process, but it's not often that we think about our actual process until we're in the thick of it. We often forget about all of the admin and overhead a designer has to go through to produce those outputs that a client pays top dollar for, and it often comes at a cost. If a designer is spending their time with onboarding, setting up workshops, preparing presentations, all of these things that are needed to produce work, what time does that actually leave you to design? Well, what if some of that overhead was removed? What value would that be able to add back to the project? What if a designer could just get back to designing? Well, it turns out that the industry has thought a lot about these problems, and DesignOps is something that is becoming more and more popular in our industry. Kate Kaplan from Nielsen Norman Group defines DesignOps as the orchestration and optimization of people, processes, and craft in order to amplify design's value and impact at scale. Now, there is a wealth of documentation, videos, articles, all of these things talking about DesignOps and the value it can add to your design team. So I'm not going to be spending this talk explaining DesignOps or talking about DesignOps in too much detail. Instead, I would like to take you through 3 specific examples of how we at Tigerspike are looking to operationalize some of our processes. First, we want to look at how we're operationalizing our onboarding journey to get new starters up and running much faster. Next, how we're consolidating our design activities to remove overhead when running a project. And then finally, a little on how we're building on our culture of feedback to really facilitate the learning from others. So let's get started with onboarding. Now, we've all been there. We've all been that new starter on a new project. And getting started at a new company especially looks different every single time. Some companies do it well, others not so much. When I joined Tigerspike, I was relieved to learn that we had a pretty good onboarding process. COVID-19 did make things a little bit more challenging, but overall the process was really good. I was given a great buddy to learn the ropes from and was really absorbed into the Tigerspike culture and the Tigerspike design team. But what I learned very quickly, however, is that the success of my onboarding relied almost exclusively on people making themselves available, not just in my design team, but across the business. I would often have to send messages to people, knowing that I may not be able to get an instant reply because they were focused on their work. I couldn't help it, but I would feel guilty from time to time, guilty for having to disturb someone just so that I can get an answer to perhaps a really simple question. And as time went on, and as I began feeling more and more comfortable in the Tigerspike way of doing things, I realized that a lot of the issues I came across in my first few weeks could have been mitigated if there was just some simple documentation to point me in the right direction. And so I began thinking, would it be possible to operationalize the onboarding process without removing the humanity from it? I wasn't sure what this would look like, so I began researching everything I could about it. I researched how other teams and how other companies do onboarding, and eventually I stumbled upon a really simple idea. As a new starter at the Melbourne design team at Tigerspike, what would my first day look like, my first week, my first month, and my first year? And how might we be able to provide guidance rather than instruction? That last part is probably the most important. What we don't want to do is suggest that onboarding can be achieved without human interaction. We don't want to provide a guide, we want to provide a guide so that a new starter knows who to speak to and how to get the information they need, rather than just getting things done in isolation. And so we got off setting out our documentation. We created a space called Getting Started at Tigerspike, and I was fortunate enough to be in a position, having just recently joined the business, to document my own experiences that I learned going through my own onboarding. So now we've mapped out and documented our onboarding guide for the Tigerspike Melbourne design team. Things like who to speak to for software licenses, or where to go to learn more about our engagement models. Fun things like different Slack channels to join, and even good places to grab a coffee in the area when we do eventually get back to our office. So what value has this added? Well, first of all, getting our new starters up and running sooner with all the tools and resources they need to do their job is crucial to their success in their role. By documenting our onboarding journey and making it visible, we are also empowering our new starters to take control of their onboarding and not feel lost. We want to ensure that we're not leaving our new starters confused and uncertain, ensuring that even if the team isn't available at that very moment, that the new starter can still move forward. For the rest of the team, it means that they're able to provide the support and guidance to that new starter more effectively, meaning they can focus on their work and not have to be disturbed from perhaps questions that get asked quite often. And I've personally found it to be quite useful for me to be able to refer back to the onboarding experience whenever I need to complete some admin, such as expense reports or end-of-year performance reviews. So documenting our onboarding has really been a relatively simple process to get started, but I believe that it will be valuable moving forward. The ultimate test will be when we welcome a new starter into the team and we get them to refer to this documentation. The fact that our onboarding journey is now documented, though, means that it facilitates iteration. Our designers are able to look back at it and make improvements when we need to. My second example is about consolidating our design activities. Our design team is busy. We're working on a heap of different projects where we may be running dozens of different activities and workshops, having hundreds of different meetings and interactions, and producing a heap of design assets. But when we're so involved in the work we're producing, and often finding that we don't always have the luxury of time on our side, we often forget to look internally and innovate on our ways of working. How often have you worked on an engagement where you've needed to spend half the sprint writing documentation or perhaps putting together a slide deck? Why is it that when we get started on a new project or work with a new client, even though we run many of the same activities we have on previous engagements, that we almost always start from scratch? What if our designers don't need to think about all the detail to set up a standard discovery workshop? What if all the material and instruction needed to run a Crazy 8 or Affinity diagramming activity have already been created? Could it be that if some of that overhead were to be removed, that a designer could add more value to a project for the same amount of time? And so we got to work identifying some of the activities that we would run during some of our engagements. And we sorted them into the 5 categories of design thinking: understand, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And we wanted to start small, so we picked a couple of simple activities to focus on first, and then we set out to answer 4 questions. Why is this activity run? What do you need to run this activity? How do you run this activity? And what do you get out of this activity? So we created a space called processes and activities, and added subgroups for things, we added subgroups for each of the categories. Each of the activities is then documented under their relevant categories. There is a lot of opportunity to add to this content. As you can see, we've got a affinity diagramming in there, for example, and we've got why this activity is run, how it's actually run. We've got a little download section where you can download a quick starter guide, so how you do your post notes, how you do your how might we questions, all of the things you need to run that activity. And we really see this as a place, sort of like a one-stop shop where all designers can actually go to get this content all in the one place. So what value does this add? Well, first of all, it means that we'll be able to set up activities much quicker with templates and other material made available. New starters, especially more junior designers, are able to get up to speed with our activities and get a good idea of how these activities are typically run. With our activities documented, we're also able to iterate and improve on them. And whenever necessary, a designer can refer back to the documentation as like a quick reference if they haven't run the activity in a while. It's important for designers to be able to do what they do best. By removing some of the administration and overhead from activities, our designers will be able to spend more of their time and energy in adding the value of good design. There are many things that designers do every day that can be simplified, templated, and automated. It's about identifying parts of our process that can be made more efficient without compromising the quality and context of our work. I'm really excited about this section in particular and really can't wait to see where we take it. Finally, I'd like to talk about how we're looking to improve knowledge sharing. I don't know about you, but I've never worked on a project where everything has gone perfectly well. And I've never worked on a project where I can say hand on heart that I've been completely confident throughout the entire project that my work was hitting the mark absolutely perfectly. No matter how experienced we are, we all come across unforeseen challenges. And at times, we may not be certain about which direction we should take. Unfortunately, many of these challenges can at times block us from being able to deliver our work. But I believe that collaboration and feedback is a way around this problem. One of the advantages of scaling your design team is the opportunity to learn from others with different backgrounds and different points of view. As a designer, if you're not challenged on your work, you'll struggle to grow and improve your craft. Being comfortable to receive feedback is really about being okay with vulnerability. Making your work transparent and asking for others to judge it can be very daunting, but it's truly one of the best things about being in a high-performing team. At Tigerspike, our designers love to share their work and talk about design at any opportunity they can get. We're proud of our work, and we want to continuously advocate the value of good design. But there is a difference between sharing your work and requesting feedback on your work. So we've been looking at 3 opportunities to build upon our feedback of culture at Tigerspike. First, we want to start with the fundamentals. How do you request feedback, and how do you give feedback? Next, how might we make our work more transparent and available for others to provide feedback? And finally, how might we give designers an opportunity to present their work and get the feedback they need in a structured, repeatable way? So first, let's talk about fundamentals. How do you request feedback, and how do you give good quality, constructive feedback? This might sound very simple and straightforward, but you'll be surprised how difficult it actually is. It's a craft in itself, and it's something that needs to be practiced. Quality feedback will develop over time, and as the team begins to speak the same language, their perspectives on good quality design will mature. So what are some of the things you should think about when requesting feedback? Well, first, you need to always ensure you frame your problem. People need to know what problem you're trying to solve and what the context of that problem looks like. Without it, people might not be able to provide the feedback that is relevant or appropriate to your problem. Call out specifically what it is that you want feedback on, raise any constraints you have with the project, actively listen, and avoid pitching your work. When giving feedback, try to ensure that the feedback you're giving is rational, objective, and actionable. Remember that you should be critiquing the work and not the designer. Focus on what you're being asked to review, be short and concise, detailed and specific, and always write your feedback down. Trying to put some of these fundamentals into practice might feel a little uncomfortable to begin with, but it will develop over time. What we want to do is move from unhelpful feedback to constructive feedback. After understanding these fundamentals, how might we make our work more transparent and available for others to provide that feedback? We are very used to working on our designs, collaborating in our project teams, and then capturing this work into folders or onto platforms that we've agreed on as part of our project team. But how easy is it to get that work in front of people or other teams so that they can provide the feedback, teams that aren't necessarily our own project teams? One of the things we wanted to improve at Tigerspike is how we could more easily share our work with others and display it in such a way that we can provide feedback on it. Initially, we thought about displaying our work throughout the office with clearly defined problem statements, constraints, and questions. We will then have sticky notes nearby so that anyone passing through will be able to provide feedback or their ideas. But then COVID-19 hit and we moved from our offices into something that looks a little bit more like this. So at the moment, we're looking to pivot and to bring the physical display of work into the digital space. And we're looking at a range of different tools such as Slack or Confluence so that we can request feedback in an open forum for anyone to review. But really, it doesn't matter what tool we use or how we display our work, as long as we make our work transparent and open to others to provide that feedback. Finally, we wanted to explore how we might give designers an opportunity to present their work and get the feedback they need in a structured and repeatable way. This is really about bringing together the fundamentals of good feedback and the transparency of displaying our work. Every Friday, we run a design catch-up with the entire Melbourne design team, and we wanted to explore how we could use some of this meeting time to better facilitate feedback. And so we set to work on what a structured design review would look like from start to finish. We didn't want it to be too rigid, but we needed to have a structure that gave the designer an opportunity to present their work for what it was, and then a chance for the rest of the team to provide feedback. And what we came up with was pretty straightforward. First of all, there are 3 roles to play in a design review: the presenter, the facilitator, and the critic. The presenter would normally be the designer responsible for the project. Their role is to give the critics enough context and information to ensure that they feel comfortable in giving feedback. The facilitator has 3 jobs: to support the presenter in setting up the design review, ensuring that the presenter and critic are following the fundamentals of good quality feedback, and most importantly, to timekeep. The critics are responsible for providing feedback to the presenter. Critics don't need to be designers, they can be from any discipline and background. Next, design reviews are broken into 3 stages: before, during, and after the review. Now, before the review, the presenter will prepare any work they want to get feedback on. They will frame their problem, identify any constraints, and list out what it is that they want the critics to focus on. During the design review, the facilitator will begin by running through the agenda and reminding everyone on the ground rules. The presenter will then explain the scope, context, and design problems. And once the critics are comfortable with the context, the presenter will then share their work. Critics are then given an opportunity to discuss and to provide feedback, while the presenter is listening, of course, actively listening. And finally, the facilitator will sum up and close off the session. After the design review, the facilitator will ensure that all of the feedback is shared with the presenter, who will then document everything and arrange any follow-up sessions if needed. These 3 things: learning how to request and give feedback, making our work transparent, and running structured design reviews are our first steps in helping our designers share their experiences. This is very much a cultural change. Even small changes take time to establish. There is so much opportunity for sharing knowledge, and it's probably one of the most important things for any design team to get good at. Your team is made up of people with different backgrounds, stories, and lives. Embracing that experience will allow you to push yourself forward, designing products that are richer and more refined. So don't forget to learn from your peers. Learn from them at any opportunity you get. So 3 things to get designers back to designing again: mapping out our onboarding journey to get new starters up and running faster, consolidating our design activities to remove overhead when running projects, and sharing knowledge by building on our culture of feedback to enable learning from others. For us at Tigerspike, we've chosen to start small, picking a few easy wins that we feel will provide the biggest impact and chipping away at it during the time we have available to us. DesignOps might seem overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be massive or complex. It can be any size you want it to be, and it can focus on anything you want. It's something that will never be done, and that's as it should be. DesignOps at any size should evolve with your team and with the challenges your team faces. It's important to remember that for any change to be adopted and embraced, it cannot be prescribed. Rather, the change should be one that has been collaborated on by the people you want this change to affect. I hope my talk today has given you some ideas of how you can implement DesignOps and get your designers back to designing again. Thank you.